This video is sponsored by Ubisoft, who let me spend 4 hours with Anno 117. I will be sharing all my thoughts and my feelings on the game in the 4 hours that I got in this video. Anno 117 Pax Romana is one of Ubisoft's most ambitious developments to date. It is the most ambitious installment in the Anno series and one of the most expansive games made about the Roman Empire. Now, who am I? I'm Guthuk. As you've probably noticed from my channel, I like more complicated games. Am I familiar with the Anno series? No, I've never played any of them. Am I familiar with city builders? I played one of them about 10 years ago, and that was all the experience I drew upon for this game. I'm going to try to give you guys as much information as I got about this game so that you guys can learn the most that you can. So in Anno 117, you'll be governor of Latium or Albion. In some of the previews, they've said that you'll be a governor of Latium and Albion. Technically true, but also you're not going to be a governor of both at the same time. You seem to play in one of the two different areas. For the preview, at least, we got to play in Latium, which does seem to be the more peaceful area, at least from the little bit that we played on. So it does a little bit of an introduction, and then we just start off building our city here. Using only the little bit of background knowledge that I had, as well as only the tutorials in the game, I did not ask any of the presenters or Ubisoft any questions at all. Using only what I had available to me is how I played the game. They didn't make me play like that, I just wanted to play like that so that I could get the full experience of a new player to tell you guys how it went. And I actually found it to be very, very playable. The tutorial itself seems to kind of ease you into the game. There don't seem to be any obvious noob traps or pitfalls to get around. The UI itself seems to be pretty good at guiding you into what you want. For example, if you're trying to build something, it will generally tell you, pretty cleanly in front of you, this is what you need to build that building. If you're trying to build some sort of food stall, vendor, something like that, to sell food to people in your city, it'll show you like, okay, so this is the resource you're gonna need for this, and it's just right here. So click this, build the farm of whatever farm type you need, and then that will go into the food stall. So all of that stuff, it was very available right to me and very obvious. Now, because I'd never played an Anno game before, I did ask some of my friends who had played the game, what are some questions you would have for a video such as this? And one of the big questions that everybody wanted to ask is, how do warehouses work? And I can tell you that the way warehouses work is, while they do have an upkeep and they do have a build cost, so long as you have a warehouse, all the warehouses contained within one island share all their goods. So you can just put a warehouse next to anything, and so long as people deposit into that warehouse, people can take that good out of any other warehouse on the island. Personally, I far preferred this, as one of my frustrations with city builder games and why I haven't really played them a lot is because I really didn't enjoy the aspect of warehouses and moving goods and all that sort of tedious stuff. And I know a lot of people like that sort of complexity and that sort of tedium, but I've always just sort of found that stuff very frustrating to me. And so I was very happy when in this game, all warehouses, at least so long as they're on within one island, all warehouses share their inventory with every other warehouse, so you don't need to do too much micromanagement or anything like that. Now, again, if you do put down too many warehouses, they do have a build cost and they do have an upkeep, so working with the absolute smallest amount of warehouses you can is, of course, the ideal way to go about it. The game does seem to have a quest system. Now, again, I only got to play 4 hours, so they were getting more and more complex as time goes on, but early in the game, I just had this one where I just click an option and get some timber to try to speed up the early game, I imagine. Later on, I was getting quests to take items onto my boat and deliver it to other islands. That one seemed to try to familiarize new players with the fact you're not just playing on an island, but that there's a whole map and you kind of need to go sail around to see them all. Didn't get too far in to see how complicated they were going to get. But, I mean, these were effectively tutorial quests to try to familiarize you with all the different game systems, and I did actually get familiarized with the game systems, so they were working as they intended. So, of course, that gets us to your population. There are 3 different tiers of population within your islands. The more complicated jobs will obviously need higher tiers of population. How do you level them up? Well, in all these sorts of games, the more goods that you actually deliver to your population, the more they'll pay you. And in addition to that, if you actually meet all the goods requirements of a tier 1 population, you can upgrade them to a tier 2. And then if you meet all the tier 1 and tier 2 requirements of a population, you can upgrade them to tier 3. About the time that you're familiarized with the tier 1 systems, you'll upgrade them to tier 2, at which point you'll start unlocking more and more things. and you'll meet all those and you'll try to get them into tier 3. For me, the pacing seemed about right on this one. About as quickly as I could figure out and build these things is about how quickly I could upgrade them. While eventually I was waiting around a little bit for timber, it didn't really feel slow or sluggish or anything like that. As I figured out the systems, I was pretty much just cruising through the game at the pace I was figuring them out. So the pacing and the upgrading your population, all of that felt pretty good to me. So far as complexity and how much I could try to min-max it to do this better, because obviously people that play these sorts of games, they don't want to just play it once, do about as good as I could ever do, and then get bored because they can't really improve. So I definitely did get the feeling my city placement could get significantly better, and that a lot of the, let's say, base concepts were pretty easy to pick up. A lot of it just sort of came down to, okay, so I know these base concepts, I'm moving through things, maybe next time I can learn to do all this stuff better, which is, I think that's pretty much the ideal way you would want these systems to be. And although, again, I'll keep mentioning, I only got the 4 hours to play through it. That's just my first impression with it. It felt very much like a system. I would hesitate to call it a system that was easy to pick up but hard to master, because that's languishing a lot of praise on it. But at the very least, from my impression, yeah, that actually is kind of the first impressions I got of it, was that they removed a lot of the tedium in things like the warehouse management and stuff like that. They gave it a very clean UI that concisely conveyed me information, and then due to the weird and odd layout that a lot of these islands can have, it's up to you to figure out, okay, here's the base systems, now how are you going to go about and do best on this? Now, of course, it does remain, is this going to be a system? Will this game be complicated enough to satisfy everyone's needs in the end? Again, I'm hesitant to lavish too much praise on it, but at the very least, I do think it's a good system right now. You can queue things up, which sounds maybe not that incredible, but I have seen sorts of games like this before where you can't queue things up. You can only build them once you get the resources. Just a small note, you can queue things up, you can do the layout of your city and then finish it as you get the resources for it. Not a big deal, just something that some games don't have, so it's good to note this one has it. As we get to clay plus charcoal equals tiles, do note that charcoal needs to be placed away from the rest of your city, at the very least the charcoal mines, because it will have the smog. The smog will make all the people in your city unhappy. Once people are unhappy, they'll, well, you know, bad things will eventually start happening with them. It'll also give you some fire risk, which you don't want the fire risk, you don't want the unhappiness. So you do want your city laid out in a way, obviously, where you've got the main city, all the residents, the market sections, later on churches, things like that. You want all those laid out together in one mega city, and then you want them like pulling up from the countryside outside of the city where you get the majority of your resources. So again, there's going to be a lot of management and things like that. You're going to have layouts in mind. And as you can see here, there's a river bending through, and I do need to get clay from the river, but I don't have like unlimited space for my city. So there's obviously each different map's going to have different layouts and different challenges like that for you to go through. As we hit technology, you're going to start making some of the choices you can make. They're going to make your different playthroughs play differently. Although in this tutorial here, at the very least my playthrough, I didn't really get to see that much of it. I can definitely tell through looking at the systems in the game that you can choose to be mostly a Roman culture, or you can go with mostly a Celtic culture, and those will influence the different technology options that you have. So if I had more time with the system, I could tell you more, but all I can say is that you're going to have different paths for your technology. Although it won't totally change the tree, it's going to give you different options that you can make. You can't, of course, get everything. Now, I do understand that lots of Anno players want to see a more fleshed out military system, and you do see the military technologies here on the right. I see you seeing it, just wait and I'll try to go over it more in depth later. The second major choice, in addition to the culture and technology choices you make, is which god you decide to praise. Although I seemingly only looked through 2 of them and then immediately chose the god of grain, and I kind of wish past me and looked through more of them. you can choose which god you worship, and each of them will give you different bonuses. And of course, you can't actually worship every god at the same time, so this is a second major choice that will influence your playthrough. You start out on a single island, and the map is made out of many islands, which will have many governors who expand throughout the different islands. And the different governors will have different, it seems, they're named characters, and they'll have personalities, gradings, stuff like that. You can do some diplomacy and things like that, but all the characters I met were extremely friendly, because I don't think they're trying to blow out their playtesters and kill them with aggressive governors right at game start. So there was no warfare, nobody attacked me, no defensive alliances. I think I could have just non-aggression packed all of them even. So there wasn't really much to do diplomatically, but I guess it's just good to show that it's here. As your main island continues to increase in size, you're going to notice a problem. At the very least, I had a problem in that there was a trade good I needed to promote my population from tier 2 to tier 3 that was not on my main island. So I needed to start going around the map, and I needed to start exploring for where I could get vineyards to actually grow, olives, because I couldn't actually grow them on my main island. No matter how big and luxurious you make your main island, you're going to have to go to other islands. And I suppose that's where diplomatic conflicts might start happening, because at least for me, when I finally did actually find an island that could grow olives so I could actually upgrade to tier 3, one of the other governors bought the island, and let's just say I would have had to have seeken a military option to get it from him. But no matter, I did continue to search around, and I did eventually find my olive island. So this takes us to expansion, buying more islands. You can of course buy an island. You put down a new dock on that new island, and then you own it, and then you can continue to build on it. As I did mention earlier in the video, warehouses are isolated on an island to island basis, so you can't pull resources from a different island. You do need to ship your goods, which I will get into in a second. That's like the one system that I was actually not too happy with. The purpose of these additional islands seems to be access to additional trade goods, so you do seem to want at least a diversity of islands. You can't just exist on one. You need to expand out and then bring those trade goods into your central island. So of course, depending on which trade goods you're trying to get out of an island depends on which tier of worker you need on the island. Olives are just farmed up by the tier 1 workers, so the entire second island was just a tier 1 island. It was just a bunch of tier 1 workers all farming olives to pull back to my main island. I think that's probably what the developers intended. I'm not really too sure. Some of my Anno friends have asked me to clarify whether or not you can have like one central island of like old tier 3 people, and that, yeah, that does seem possible so long as you actually use the ships to pull the olives in, so you've got enough olives to continue to feed everybody. And it doesn't have to be olives, it can be other stuff, but I think you get the central idea here, right? Now the problem I have with the naval shipping lanes is it just kind of isn't fun. It's quite frustrating, and it's not very flexible. All you can do is tell a ship to go on a trade route, and that trade route will automatically pick up or deposit goods as quickly as it can go between two islands, and it'll just continue on that path indefinitely. You can't assign ships to fulfill the needs of an island and to just pull it out of another island and pull it back to the first island. You can't assign anything to be automatic. You need to do these very stingy shipping lanes that will often deposit too many goods because it just keeps going back and forth indefinitely, or doesn't deposit enough quick enough, or you have to set up a new shipping lane every time you need a new good, or you need to manually load up things, tell the ship to go down and then deposit it. It's all just very frustrating, and it's weird to me because the entire rest of the game is so flexible and very much not tedious, and then every time I need to ship anything between islands, it's bad, and that's all I can say. It's not very well done, and I really hope they change it for the final release because this is not elegant. Let's wrap up city management now. All the usual suspects that I've seen in other games are here for city management. You've got things like fire brigades, you've got things like roving police. All the usual suspects seems to be here. There doesn't seem to be any particular gap in the city management. Anything that I've seen in other games just generally seems to be here. Once again, this is not like my genre of choice, but I have played these games before and I have some knowledge on them, and I don't think that there's anything that was particularly left out here, so this should work. I mean, you got your medical dudes, you got your bridges. I don't think that there's any big gaps here to talk about. Now, lastly, for the military, I didn't really get to experience any of the military. I saw it and I decided to build it because I knew that military units weren't often in, or really ever in, Anno games. So I don't really have that much footage of it. We can see right here that we have an auxilia, which says it has a natural advantage over cavalry, as well as the anti-cavalry modifier. I'm going to assume that means that there are cavalry in the game, unless that's some big practical joke for some reason. We can also see defense 9, which is training 3, armor 3, shield 3. We can see head count, health, morale, speed. So there's definitely going to be some sort of military system in the game, but I didn't get to experience it. And the military system will not just be on the land, but there are several types of boats as well, some of them being more military focused than others. So there is going to be some sort of military system in the game, and definitely a land military system. I did see at the beginning of the game, it said that my governor's palace would need to be defended. There were walls in the game. I obviously didn't build any walls. You get the general idea. There is going to be military. There will be people attacking you. There will need to be a purpose to wall your settlement. I'm going to assume that that's going to deal more with Albion, because Albion at this time period is, of course, a bit uncivilized. In fact, it's always been a bit uncivilized. I'm not sure they ever did. At any rate, that's the military system and what I know of it. So thank you, Ubisoft, for sponsoring this video, and Anno 117 Pax Romana will be available late 2025, so make sure to wishlist it. I hope I showed everything that you guys were hoping to see in a video like this. So if you like this, make sure to like, make sure to subscribe, leave a comment down below on any of your thoughts, and as always, I hope all of you have a great rest of your day.